Welcome to Ballot Battleground, Nevada. I'm your host, Ben Margiott, a reporter at KRNV News 4 in Reno. I'm passionate about making politics in this critical battleground state more digestible to the average voter and pushing past the talking points to press politicians for answers. On this show, we take deep dives into the people, ideas, and debates shaping Silver State politics. This week's guest needs no introduction, but we should still introduce her, Nevada's senior senator, Catherine Cortez Masto, the first Latina to serve in the U.S. Senate, Nevada's first female senator, the successor to the late Harry Reid, and someone who is often rumored to be in consideration for higher office, whether that be the U.S. Supreme Court or a cabinet position. We were so honored that she joined us in person in the studio for a lengthy sit-down interview on her work in the Senate, the Biden-Harris switch-up, no taxes on tips, ranked choice voting, and a whole lot more. And don't forget to stick around until the end for another edition of our new segment, Fact-Checking Political Commercials. All right, without further ado, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. And I'm thrilled and honored to be joined by sitting U.S. Senator from Nevada, Catherine Cortez Masto. Senator Cortez Masto, thank you so much for being here.
I am so excited to join you and be on your podcast.
I have to admit, I'm not normally nervous for political interviews because I do so many of them, but this is cool for our little show that we launched back in February. A big milestone for us, to having a sitting U.S. Senator. Not only that, one that made history, the first Latina in the U.S. Senate, Nevada's first female senator. So we're honored to have you on. We really appreciate you making the time.
Well, listen, let me just say thank you for doing this. I've listened to some of your podcasts. It's informational for the people here in Nevada, and I thank you for doing it.
Of course.
You've done a good job.
Thank you so much.
That means you're going to go easy on me now that I've...
Well, I can't commit to that.
All right.
Absolutely
All
not.
right.
First question. You're not running for a race this year. Mm-hmm. Are you relieved that, you have time to do things like podcasts and whatnot and go to pool openings now that you're not running a really tight campaign?
Well, it is true that when you're off the election year, for me, it really, I get to focus on the policy. I get to focus on bringing resources to the community, getting out and spending time throughout the state and talking to people about what we need and what we can do together and what I can focus on when I'm in Washington. So, and then you get to come back and say, okay, we got these resources and, oh my gosh, here's what we've done together. So the new aquatics facility that was just at earlier today at Moana, I was able to get $800,000 for the solar piece of that. So it is important to be around and be involved in the community, and I love it. It's just great to be home and be able to work in public-private partnerships and work with our community members.
I was going to ask you next. What have you been up to? As you mentioned, we're at the Moana pool opening on Tuesday as we're recording this, at Home Depot, at Labor Fest. What have you been up to? Because you've been in Nevada, northern Nevada, I should say, for several days now.
Yeah, we just had our senior fair. I was over there at the senior fair today talking with our seniors, looking at, the vendors that are there, the opportunities for our seniors. A lot of the work I do is around senior health care, ensuring that our seniors really have access to affordable health care. I sit on Senate Finance, so that has oversight over Medicare, right? So the cutting... let me just say, part of that was ensuring that our seniors have access to vaccines for free. I go to the Senior Fest, and sure enough, there is a line where seniors are standing in line getting those vaccines. And it's great to see, the work that we get to do together to benefit our community. And that's what it's all about, really. And it's exciting for me, and that's why I love to do what I'm doing.
Yeah. Let's talk 2024, because you were fresh off the trip to Chicago a few weeks ago for the DNC, but a lot happened to lead up to you speaking at Kamala Harris's convention instead of Joe Biden's convention. So you were publicly supportive of Joe Biden, but I have to ask what your reaction to watching that debate was, because you, after the fact, as people were working behind the scenes maybe to push him out, you said, it's time for Nevadans to stand with Joe Biden. What made you say that after the debate?
A couple of things. One, he was and still is our sitting president. He's done incredible things for this country, both on foreign affairs, but also domestically. I just talked about free vaccines for seniors. A lot of that came because Joe Biden signed the legislation and pushed for that legislation, cutting costs of insulin, right? Making sure there's more money in our seniors' pockets. It's just everything that we have done in this state, from the bipartisan infrastructure package to bring more clean energy jobs to Nevadans, and focus on how we reduce our carbon footprint at the same time growing our economy because of the legislation. That was Joe Biden and Kamala Harris working with us on those. So it is, I will just say this, I thought the process itself was horrific. The outcome was probably the outcome that I think many of us thought at the end of the day was going to happen. But the process and how it was handled, I was not supportive of it. I was supportive and will always be supportive of Joe Biden. He's done incredible work. I think he will go down in history as one of the presidents who has done so much for this country and actually changed the trajectory of our economy and creating jobs and bringing manufacturing and jobs back to this country. He will also go down in history as somebody who united a lot of our allies around the world at a time that was essential for us to build and keep those relationships.
And you say horrific, referring to Democratic leaders
the public process,
pushing him out, essentially?
No, it was just the public process. I think, from my perspective, if anyone had a concern about Joe Biden after that debate, and listen, it was a bad debate. Everybody could see it. We all saw it.
Sure.
But then tell him. Talk to him. And if you have access to him, then you tell him. And talk to him about it. Don't make it public. Don't go write an op-ed about it.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're an individual that knows him, that has the ability to talk to him and explain it to him. And I thought that to me was the horrific part of it. If you have the ability to talk to him and you have access to him, then explain to him and go and talk to him about it. That's where I thought it was just a bad process all around.
I will give you credit because I think oftentimes politicians are known for and disliked for saying one thing publicly and saying a different thing privately. You were tweeting, it's time to have President Biden's back. And then there was this New York Times story several days ago that, behind the scenes as well, you were kind of resisting these efforts, saying it could create chaos that the party would be better off avoiding. I mean, did you not want there to be kind of an open process where he was out and the party might not have united behind Harris and just kind of the chaos that could potentially create with a couple months left to the election?
No, I think it was very clear. And I think I think I heard John Ralston say this after the fact on your podcast. It's very clear by the time that Joe Biden, by the way, stepped down, it was his decision to step down. We got to remember, it was his decision all along, is to stay in or step down. And it was his decision to step down. By that time, it was too late to go to some sort of convention where we were going to figure out who was going to be our next leader. The ticket was Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. The next logical step is, because we elected them as a ticket, we elected her vice president, we elected her to be in line should something happen to the president of the United States. The next logical step was, all right, if he steps down, then Kamala Harris is the one that we all get behind and support.
What's your relationship with Kamala Harris like? You mentioned in your speech at the DNC that you guys go way back to serving as attorneys general, is the correct plural there, in California and Nevada. When did you first meet her? What issues did you guys work on?
I first met her, I was attorney general, and she was running for attorney general in California. We just hit it off. And as she became the attorney general, we were able to work on a number of issues that Nevada and California have in common, just because we're border states. A lot of what happens, and I mean borders, we share a border, right?
Yeah.
In Lake Tahoe. And a lot of what happens in California sometimes bleeds into Nevada and vice versa. So we just had a lot in common, particularly as Western state AGs, from drought issues to fire issues to land issues. So we just hit it off and were able to work together to solve problems that we were dealing with in our states. And that through that developed a friendship and a bond, and just think so highly of her and know that she is capable. Like the fact that she's a Westerner, so she gets our Western issues. And I know what she has fought for in the past, and know that that's what she carries with her. I think the rest of the country now is seeing the Kamala Harris that I have known. She's just never had the ability to be at the forefront because, quite honestly, as vice president, that's not your job, right? Your job is to just be there and support the president. And it's the president's decision what policies you're going to take and how you're going to move forward and how much the president wants you as vice president to be involved.
What's something that the public might not know or understand about her that you, having gone back many years with her, do?
Yeah, I think you're seeing it now. She cares, and she's a compassionate person, and she really cares, and she's a true believer in ensuring that our working families have every opportunity. She fights for our families. She fights for them and their future. That's what she has done. I know as Attorney General, I've watched her do it as Senator, and now you see that coming out as she's running now to be the next president, is this idea, and it comes, as you can see, from her background and her upbringing, that everybody should have an opportunity, what you call an opportunity economy. Everybody should have that opportunity to succeed, and that's what she works towards.
The Review Journal reported that you were on the vetting team to kind of maybe speak with or at least dig deeper on some of the vice presidential candidates. And were you advocating for Tim Walz behind the scenes? What was kind of your involvement in that process?
No, listen, at the end of the day, it was Kamala Harris's decision. The vetting that went on, and I was absolutely honored to be a part of it and asked to be a part of it. But the vetting was to really interview the candidates, look at their backgrounds, talk to them, answer those questions, figure out as part of the vetting team their strengths, the challenges that they might have on the ticket, and then share that with the Vice President Harris. And then she actually would make a decision based on that information, based on her interviews, her kind of meeting with them and figuring out from her perspective how she felt was the best candidate to be with her, and taking into consideration the work that we did as a vetting team. But it was her decision at the end of the day.
What's your involvement with the campaign moving forward?
You know, I will say this. I am very focused on Nevada and Jackie Rosen and making sure that at the end of the day, not only does Jackie Rosen win and that we actually hold the Senate as Democrats, because there's so much on the line, and we can go into that, but there's so much at stake. But also our delegation, and making sure that our delegation is returned to Congress to continue the work that we've done for Nevada as a whole.
I know you're focused on Nevada, but your name always gets floated around when we're talking about higher offices, a cabinet position, U.S. Attorney General, for example. Any interest in that position?
Listen, I am very honored to have my name floated out there, but I run in Nevada because I believe in Nevada. This is what people elected me to do. I just got reelected to my second term, honored to represent this state. And it's what the voters have asked me to do, and sending me back and fighting for them in Washington. And I am just love the job and want to continue in as long as our Nevada voters will have me.
It's not a denial. You, as I mentioned in the intro, Nevada's first female senator. Nevada has a majority female legislature in Carson City. Kamala Harris, first woman vice president. You think America's ready for a female president?
Yes. And I do think at the end of the day, we are seeing across the country more women activated than ever. And why is it? Well, obviously it's because of the overturning of Roe versus Wade and the Dobbs decision that has taken away women's rights and freedoms in this country when it comes to reproductive freedom. The challenges that we are facing there is one of I think, the key motivators for so many across the country, and particularly women, to stand up and fight for their rights and their freedoms. And we see it in Nevada, but we see it across the country. And I will say this, it's fascinating to me. People always talk to me about, well, Nevada's, you're protected. You had a ballot in 1990s that protects Nevada. And I said, people of Nevada, by the way, whether you're a Republican, Democrat, nonpartisan, a man or a woman, we all believe, at least almost 2/3 of us, right, that women should have the right to choose. And that's no different than the rest of the country. And so you see now people coming out and saying, no, we're going to push back. We are going to fight for these freedoms for women across the country, that they're treated equally across the country. And it shouldn't matter what state you live in, whether you have access to 21st century medicine for your reproductive needs. And so you see a lot of that playing out across the country.
Abortion, a huge issue, of course, in the Senate race that is happening in Nevada this cycle. Your colleague, Junior Senator Jackie Rosen, running against Sam Brown, the Republican nominee, of course. You won the closest Senate race in the country in 2022. I don't have to remind you of that. 8,000 some votes. You probably know the exact number.
7,928.
There we go. Perfect. So less than 8,000 votes. It delivered the Senate for Democrats 2 years ago. You have experience in very close races. What would your advice be for Jackie Rose in this cycle?
Well, let me just say, Nevada's traditionally been close races. That's who we are. We are a swing state. And I tell people, you got to remember, Harry Reid won an election by just 400 votes. Mine was a landslide compared to his, right? They've traditionally been close races in the state, and at all levels. And I do think that is important for people to understand, because it is a swing state, and we are Nevadans. We actually look to hopefully elect those that we truly believe are going to be looking out for the best interests of Nevada. I don't have to tell Jackie that, because she already does that. I've had the opportunity to work with her as a senator. Not only does she get around the state like I do and travels throughout Nevada in our rural communities and shows up, she follows up and she brings back. She fights for those resources. Listen, I was just at the Senior Fest, and a lot of seniors are saying thank you for protecting our mail, making sure the mail stays here in Reno. Jackie was at the forefront of that fight, right? Taking on the Postmaster General and calling them out. And it just, so I've seen her, the work that she does. And as a Nevadan, it makes me proud. And really, at the end of the day, I know she's looking out for Nevada's interests and making sure that everybody has that opportunity here in Nevada. That's what I truly believe in. And that's how she believes and how she has acted and operated as a United States Senator.
One of the big criticisms and attack lines that we're seeing from Republicans this cycle is that a lot of the spending that was under the Biden administration, whether it's the American Rescue Plan Act, more recently the Inflation Reduction Act, Democrats are going around their various states touting the investments in communities. Republicans would say that's what's contributed to so much inflation and the high prices that we're seeing and making things unaffordable for everyday Nevadans. How would you respond to that?
Those same Republicans then go back to their communities and take credit for the projects that have been created by this funding, even though they didn't vote for it. I mean, that's the hypocrisy in all of this. Listen, I know in Nevada, just because of the work that I do, I grocery shop. I talk to voters here, and I see it in my own family. And I use this as an example. I've been home for August recess in the state, getting around. And one of my aunts, Aunt Josephine, I'll say who it is. She lives in Southern Nevada. She just had a birthday. She's an August birthday.
Happy birthday to her.
Yeah. And so there is a family recipe of German chocolate cake, pan-German chocolate cake in our family, and my aunt loves it. So a good friend made it for her. And we were having cake and visiting and talking. And we were talking about this very issue, about the prices at the grocery store. And Sandy says, as a good friend, she said, you know, what was crazy is that pancake, that recipe, instead of one box of cake mix, it took me 2 boxes of cake mix to make that same cake pre-COVID than it would pre-COVID, and it costs more. So something is going on. Call it greedflation, call it corporates, America coming in, taking advantage of COVID and post-COVID to knowing that wages have, to some extent, increased and taking advantage of because people are willing to pay it. That needs to be called out. And I do think that is part of this. So to me, it is, we've come far in the sense that we've passed legislation to start helping families reduce costs, right? Child tax credit was put out there, making sure there's more money in people's pockets, taking on big pharma, making them negotiate to lower those costs for family. But more needs to be done. We see it. I feel it. And Kamala Harris feels it. And that's why she has put out those proposals that she has to address the costs that families are feeling, because she knows it and sees it in her own family. And I see it and feel it. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think Donald Trump's ever grocery shopped or has to deal with this issue. And so it is important for people to understand that at the end of the day, whether it's the child tax credit, or the earned income tax credit, or lowering costs, let me just give you one final example. We have been able to, with the Biden-Harris administration, this is something that Kamala Harris supports, cap the cost of insulin, right? At $35. But that's for Medicare. When we actually introduced this legislation, had votes on it, we put a vote on the floor to cap the cost of insulin for everybody in this country. The Republicans opposed it. The Republicans in the Senate did not support it. They voted against it. So that is where Kamala Harris's next step is. Okay, we started here with Medicare for seniors, for capping the cost of insulin. Now we got to bring it to the rest of the country. That's still the fight for lowering costs for families. She gets it. And I think at the end of the day, we all, as Democrats, we get it. And if Republicans are willing to work with us to lower those costs, great, let's do it. Let's solve those problems. But if you're going to play politics with it, just so that you can win a race on the backs of families who are struggling, then that's just, we're going to call you out on it.
Let's talk about one rare instance where Democrats and Republicans agree on an economic policy, which is no taxes on tips, initially proposed by President Donald Trump, former president, but yourself, Jackie Rosen, and many others on the Democratic side of the aisle have come out in support of this as well. You called it a bluff from him, but you support the proposal. How come?
A couple things. One, I know it's a bluff from him because you got to remember he will say and do anything for a vote. In 2016, when I was first running for the United States Senate, he was running to be president. He's got a hotel down in Las Vegas.
Yep.
And he was blocking it from becoming a union organized hotel. We had the culinary picketing out front. I joined them on the picket line. He is opposed to organized labor. He's opposed to union. We just heard his comments recently when he was talking with Elon Musk on his podcast. It is a bluff from his perspective in the sense that he will say or do anything for a political opportunity. Now, with that said, if you're going to come into my state, in my service industry, and you're going to look at how we reduce costs and keep more money in people's pockets, I'm all for figuring out how we do it. But let's not dangle something in front of them just for political opportunity. Let's actually try to figure out how to get it done. And I think that's Kamala Harris's perspective and it's not just one piece of the challenge our families are dealing. The solution for all of it, it's one piece of it. Right? It's a combination of things that we're doing to lower costs, to keep more money in their pocket, including addressing the healthcare costs, right? And continuing prescription drug negotiation, continuing the capping of costs of insulin, making sure we're bringing back that child tax credit, the earned income tax credit, so those working families can keep more of that money to help with their families and their children. So there's a combination of things that needs to be done.
So you're saying it's in conjunction with a number of other policies.
Absolutely.
Let's address one of the criticisms, though, which is that could incentivize employers to shift more of an employee's income into kind of that taxable area and potentially make wages and income a little more uneven across different job sectors.
Well, let me just say a couple of things. There's a sub-minimum wage we have to address in this country that most people don't even realize is happening because it doesn't happen in Nevada, but it happens in other countries. If you make a tip, then you get a sub-minimum wage in some other, countries, other states, right? You get a sub-minimum wage. That's crazy. That is absolutely nonsense. So that needs to be addressed as part of it. I don't hear Donald Trump talking about a sub-minimum wage issue. That needs to be addressed. But I do hear it coming from Kamala Harris. I do hear it from others that understand this issue. And so part of this is saying, okay, if this is an issue that will help us with our families, part of the puzzle of lowering this cost, then we have to understand it. We have to see if there's a way that this can work. And really address the needs of our working families. Putting the proposals out there is one thing. It is another then to work with Congress to figure out what does make sense. And I think that's what Kamala Harris is thinking about and trying to address. I know it's not what Donald Trump is trying to do.
Let's take through a couple random things here at the end. Not random, but different topics. Washoe's lands bill, for listeners who might not know, freeing up tens of thousands of acres of land, a lot of it east of Sparks, for development. It's your colleague Jackie Rosen's bill. She's the main sponsor, right? But you're involved in this, and you know how the Senate works better than any of us. Are we running out of time for this session, especially with the recess and election season and everything?
Are we running out of time in this Congress? I don't think we're running out of time. The question is, when can we get it done? This Congress or next year in the new Congress? And I'm hopeful that we are actually working through and finalizing some of the particulars in the bill to get it to a point where we can then move forward with a hearing on it at the end of the day.
In
Now,
this
who controls the hearing agenda is leadership, right? Because there's only so much time. We have to go back. We have about, 4 weeks left, 5 weeks maybe in the session before the election. We still have appropriations bills to get done. Defense Authorization Act has to be done. Farm bill still has to be worked on and done. So there's a lot on our plate to still move forward and address. But that doesn't mean that we can't get lands bills done. And my hope is, as I said, on energy and natural resources, that we are getting these all ready in the queue so that we can then have those hearings quickly and continue to move them. That's not just Washoe's, that's Clark County's lands bills and a couple of others that are still out there.
Do they get wrapped up into the budget bill or with the other lands bills or passed individually? How does it work?
So what happens is they do not get wrapped up in appropriations. They're two separate things. And so the goal will be to try to move them either on their own, preferably as part of a lands deal, right? Lands package through E&R at the end of the year, so that you have not only our lands bills in Nevada, but you have other states and other senators who care about land issues that come from the same committee, E&R, Energy and Natural Resources, that have theirs that they want to move. We've done it before at the end of the year where we have just this big lands package and we move it. That's part of the goal, is to just have our lands bills be ready to move no matter what. Whether they can move as part of a vehicle, a larger vehicle, it's not going to be appropriations, but it could be something else, or moved at the end of the year as part of a lands deal. Gotcha.
You mentioned USPS earlier, scuttling their plan to reroute all of our Northern Nevada mail through California. What was your reaction to that? And did you think they were going to back down? I talked to Mark Amadei, and he said he was thinking he might have to be carried out on a stretcher or something like that because he just didn't anticipate USPS would back down from this plan.
Well, I'll tell you what, it is interesting because I was in the room with Mark and Jackie when we had asked the Postal Service to come in and talk to us about this issue. And they could not answer any question as to why it was happening. There's no data, there's no reason. They couldn't explain it, but they were still adamant moving forward. So I can understand Mark's surprise. But here's the other thing. Nevada was not the only state that was dealing with this. We had senators from other states that had the same concerns and issues, whether they were Republican or Democrat. So this was really a pushback on the Postal Service to say, what are you doing? And show us the data, show us why this is necessary. And if you can't, then don't do it. And I think they had a lot of pressure, not just from Nevada. I'd like to think it was just Nevada alone. And I will tell you, it was Jackie who led on the Senate side on this issue. But it was great that they finally realized this just doesn't make sense. And they were listening to us as and I think many of my colleagues across the country were complaining about it.
Before we go, I want to ask you about 2 ballot questions that Nevadans will be voting on in November. First one, question 3, ranked choice voting, open primaries. It passed 2 years ago. It's going to be on the ballot in November and would change the Constitution. A lot of people see that as a way to revolutionize really how our electoral system is run, and people see it as kind of a threat to the political institutions, if you will. Why are you opposed to that?
I don't see what they're trying to fix. I'm all about fixing problems and finding solutions. I'm not sure what they're trying to fix here. We are a swing state. We elect Republicans and we elect Democrats. I'm not sure why these out-of-towners have come in to the state of Nevada to try to change and bring this ranked choice voting. And not only that, it's very complex and confusing. And why do we make voting for people so confusing when it should be easier? Our goal is to make sure everybody has that opportunity to vote, pick their candidate that they want, elect that candidate. Boom. And we have been fighting, and I've been fighting to make sure we're in a state that makes it easy for people to vote in a safe, secure manner that is accessible for them. It's exactly what we should be doing, not putting more difficulty and complexity in the process.
Supporters will say, we rank choice things every day. These are my favorite fruits. These are my top 3 restaurants I want to go to. What about that is so confusing that worries you?
Yeah. What's the solution we're trying to, what are we trying to fix here? What's the solution we're trying to address?
It would be
the problem
that,
we're trying to address.
a fraction of the electorate is choosing the nominees. It's 10% of the Republican voters are picking their nominee, 10% of Democratic voters picking their nominee because so many people are shut out of the primary as nonpartisan voters.
Then just have open primaries.
So you're supportive of
Oh,
open
yeah, I've said that. I'm
primaries.
open for open primaries. But what I have seen is they're hiding this ranked choice behind saying, oh, this ballot initiative is about open primaries. And it's not. It's about ranked choice.
Yeah.
If you want to open that door to having in a primary people be able to elect whomever, whatever party they come from, then just have open primaries in the state.
Okay. Well, hopefully you'll be watching our Question 3 debate coming up in October. Last one, voter ID. Where do you stand on that?
This is another one that I've seen as, particularly as Attorney General of the state, there's this misinformation that somehow there's this voter fraud that is happening, whether it's voter fraud or registration fraud. I did not see that as Attorney General. I still do not see it. It's, again, some sort of a solution in search of a problem that does not exist in this state. My only other concern here is that, again, it goes back to we are trying to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to exercise their constitutional right to vote. And by actually making voter IDs, you're limiting it to some people who may not have access to IDs, and you're limiting their ability to vote. Why would we want to do that other than we're trying to shape an outcome for a certain advantage? So again, I don't see what this is trying to solve. As you well know, I just have worked with our Secretary of State as Attorney General in the past, and it's true to today. People can vote. Our voting system is safe, it's secure, and it's accessible. And I think that's where we should spend our time and money to ensure that that continues for folks in the state of Nevada.
Last one, I'll put you on the spot here. What's your favorite restaurant in all of Nevada? Because you travel the whole state in this role.
Oh, that's too tough. I cannot do that. I will tell you, Nevada has some of the best food in the country from different cuisine. Right?
That's
different
a politician
cultures.
Answer, though,
I'm telling you, because it's like music. I don't have one favorite genre of music. It's true for food too, and that's the best part of Nevada. I will say this: we used to be, particularly in Southern Nevada, the buffet capital of the world. That has changed. Yeah. That has changed. Now people come here just for the cuisine, and that's a great thing to see for Nevada.
Well, it's a good reminder that I need to get back down to Southern Nevada and check out some more of it. But thank you so much for coming by, Senator Cortez Masto. We really appreciate it. It has been an honor and a pleasure. And enjoy the rest of your time in Nevada before you head back to D.C.
Thank you, Ben.
A special thank you to Senator Catherine Cortez Masto for joining the pod this week. Before we wrap up, it's time for the second edition of our new fact-checking segment, where we dig deeper on the spots you see on the airwaves. If something is airing on our stations, both News 4 and Fox 11, we want to make sure viewers have the full story. Last week, we went in depth on Sam Brown and Jackie Rosen's commercials on the issue of abortion. This week, a closer look at two ads that mention the issue of housing, one from Rosen's campaign and one from a Republican group attacking her. Here's Rosen's 30-second spot called Housing.
We have to do something about the cost of housing.
They jack it up, every time. Makes me feel like I'm not going to be able to buy a house one day.
It's why I secured funding for more affordable housing options in Nevada. And I'm going after corporations that buy up properties and drive up the cost.
Jackie Rosen fighting price gouging by corporate investors who buy up housing stock to drive up mortgage and rent costs.
I'm Jackie Rosen, and I approve this message because Nevada housing should be affordable for Nevada families.
So she makes two assertions in that commercial. First, that she secured funding for more affordable housing options. And second, that she's going after corporate investors who drive up housing costs. The first one is likely referring to the 2021 American Rescue Plan Act, a COVID relief package passed in the Biden administration that Rosen voted to help pass. Nevada received $500 million in that measure that it put into the Home Means Nevada initiative. That money went toward affordable housing projects and home ownership programs. The second claim references a bill she introduced in January called the Home Act. It would direct the Housing and Urban Development Department to investigate price manipulation by corporate investors. Any fines collected under this would go into the National Housing Trust Fund. That measure has not been heard in committee or voted on yet, so both those claims are true. She helped secure housing funding and has tried to go after corporate investors. Whether that is the right approach to the housing crisis, of course, will be up to the voters to decide. Of course, housing is still very expensive nationwide. Here in Nevada, we're about 80,000 affordable units short. The average rent in Reno Sparks last quarter was over $1,600 a month, the third highest mark ever. All right, next up, there's this 30-second commercial from a conservative group called One Nation, claiming that votes Rosen has taken have contributed to high prices.
Nevada families are getting squeezed by the high cost of groceries, gas, and housing. Rent and home prices are reaching an all-time high.
And as prices continue to climb, that dream of home ownership is getting further away.
But Senator Jackie Rosen voted to raise taxes on Nevada families earning less than $75,000 a year. And she voted to let illegal immigrants take $500 million of your tax dollars. Tell Senator Rosen to stop squeezing Nevada families with wasteful government spending on illegals.
So let's start with the claim that Senator Rosen voted to raise taxes on families making less than $75,000. The ad is apparently referencing her vote to help pass the Inflation Reduction Act. That claim is just false. According to the Associated Press and other outlets, nothing in that bill raises taxes on people earning less than $400,000. And the second claim there that she voted to allow undocumented immigrants to get $500 million of COVID relief money, that refers to the American Rescue Plan Act. To be sure, the vast majority of undocumented immigrants do not have Social Security numbers and thus were not eligible for COVID relief checks from the federal government. But this claim refers to a report that certain states and cities use some of their COVID relief programs to set up payments for undocumented immigrants because they were excluded from the federal program. Adding up the state and local programs does total around $500 million, but those were states that opted to use their relief money in that way. The federal government did not send COVID relief checks to people in the country illegally, though the bill did apparently allow states to use it for that purpose. We should point out that Nevada was not among the states that used its money to provide relief for undocumented immigrants. All right, we hope that gives you guys some additional context and clarity on those two ads. If you have a commercial you want us to fact check, please reach out. You can tag us on social media or email us. My email is bjmargiott, M-A-R-G-I-O-T-T @sbgtv.com, and put Ballot Battleground Nevada in the subject line. You can also send us your episode ideas, guest ideas, questions, comments, compliments, concerns. And if you have a minute, we'd really appreciate it if you left a rating and a review. That helps the podcast show up higher in searches so more people can discover our show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back with an all-new episode next Wednesday.